12 years into our marriage, my husband walked out on my 40th birthday, claiming he wanted someone younger. I didn't argue, I just nodded. Now at 42, he's single, back at his mom's place, while I'm engaged to his old boss. Yesterday, he showed up and dropped a bombshell. I wrestled with sharing this for months. Even now, my hands tremble as I type. This isn't about gloating or seeking sympathy. It's a chapter of my life I buried so deep I thought it was gone forever. But yesterday, something shattered that illusion, and I need to let it out. I'm Lauren. I turned 42 a while ago, but that day still feels like it was yesterday. I expected a celebration, maybe balloons, breakfast with the kids, or a small gesture if my husband remembered. Instead, I was blindsided, devastated, in front of the people I cherish most. We'd been married 12 years. 2 kids, a cozy house in Ohio, a dog that kept digging under the fence, and a routine. Not a joyful one anymore, but a rhythm. People forget that about marriage. Sometimes love fades into quiet coexistence. I wasn't ready to face that truth, not until he forced me to. That morning, I was decorating a homemade cake, something simple for us. I wasn't expecting much. I'd grown used to small letdowns. He walked in dressed sharply, wearing aftershave, a rarity at home. Then he said it. "I think I want a divorce." No warning, no discussion. The kids were still eating their oatmeal. Our youngest clutched a handmade card from colored paper. He didn't stop. He looked at me and said he'd found someone else. She was 28. "I need someone younger," he said, like he was upgrading his phone. No remorse, no pause. Then the final blow. "I hope we can keep it amicable for the kids." I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just nodded. Something inside me turned to ice. I can't describe it, but it was like I split in two. The woman he discarded, and the one determined not to let this define her. He left that afternoon, bag already packed. He barely said goodbye to the kids, just muttered something about visiting soon and walked out like he had a plane to catch. And that was it. 12 years erased in a few sentences and the scent of cheap aftershave. For a week, I told no one. I said he was on a work trip to shield the kids. I couldn't face the pity, the cliché of being the wife dumped for a younger model. So I stayed silent and started rebuilding. I'm not the type to crumble in public or beg for love. Inside, though, I was humiliated. Furious. A quiet anger took hold, not the kind that breaks plates, but the kind that sharpens you, that whispers you're not finished. I got to work, on myself, on my life. I joined a fitness class, started therapy, picked up freelancing again, something I hadn't done since the kids were small. I overhauled everything, my clothes, my style, my limits. Slowly, I became someone new, someone I loved. He thought I'd collapse. He thought he'd traded up. He didn't realize I was just beginning. The first 6 months were brutal. He rarely called the kids, and when he did, it was brief, like he had better plans. I didn't pry. I let the silence speak. The kids figured it out eventually. Meanwhile, I refused to become his stereotype. I didn't want to be the scorned ex, clinging to a ring I no longer wore. I sold it. Bought a new laptop and some dumbbells with the money. I cut my hair, reclaimed my maiden name. One evening, I went to a blues bar alone just to prove I could. The strangest part? I started enjoying my own company more than ever before. Then people noticed. My neighbor, Carla, pulled me aside and said, "You're radiant." "What's different?" I smiled and said, "I started using the whole bed." It wasn't a lie. Then came the run-in. About 10 months after he left, I was grabbing takeout at a new falafel spot downtown, wearing a navy dress that finally fit perfectly. I turned and there he was, 2 people behind me in line, looking like a shadow of the man who'd left with such swagger. The woman he left me for? Gone. She'd moved on to some startup guy in Seattle. He stared. I stared back. I gave a curt nod, nothing more. It felt good. But a few days later, something bigger happened. I got an email from Daniel, his former boss, who owned the company where my ex worked for years. We'd only spoken once, at a work event long ago. He said he'd heard about the divorce and hoped I was okay. Then he asked if I'd meet for coffee to discuss a business idea, having heard I was freelancing again. I wasn't sure if it was genuine or pity, but I went. It wasn't awkward. Daniel was sharp, witty, with a quiet intensity that made you want to listen. He asked about my work, my kids, my future. Then he said something that caught me off guard. "You've reinvented yourself. Most people just patch the cracks and keep going." We talked for hours. The business idea was real, but something else was brewing. That was the start of something unexpected. Meetings turned to lunches, lunches to dinners, dinners to something that felt like love. Then one night he kissed me. A year after being discarded, I was kissing the man who used to approve my ex's bonuses. And I felt no guilt, not for a moment. The wildest part, my ex had no clue, but he'd find out soon. It felt like I'd stepped into a life I used to dream about during those quiet dinners when my ex was on his fourth beer, ignoring me. But this was real. Daniel didn't rush things. He met the kids gradually on their terms. He didn't just talk to them, he saw them. They warmed to him faster than I expected. My daughter asked if he could come to her dance recital. That's when I knew this was bigger than me. We kept it low-key. No social media posts. But in a small town, word spreads. Around Christmas, Daniel proposed. Nothing extravagant, just us on the deck, snow falling, coffee mugs cooling nearby. He asked if we could build a life that was ours, not borrowed. I said yes. That's when things shifted. My ex found out about the engagement days later. I'm not sure how, probably a friend who couldn't resist gossiping. He texted me out of the blue. "Really? Him? You're joking, right?" I didn't reply. The next day, the kids said he called, asking odd questions. Did Daniel ever raise his voice, stay over, act controlling? It was clear he wasn't parenting. He was digging. A week later, he showed up at my house unannounced. Daniel and I were assembling a bookshelf in the kitchen. The kids were upstairs. I heard the knock and opened the door. There he was, shivering without a coat, like he'd stormed over in a huff. He didn't greet me, just said, "So this is your game now, playing family with my boss." Daniel stepped into the hall, silent but steady. My ex lost it, muttering about betrayal, saying, "This isn't done." He kicked over a trash can as he left. It didn't stop there. He started bumping into us at stores, the gym, leaving a vague note on Daniel's car. "You don't know her like I do." It wasn't scary, just sad. For the kids, for who he used to be, but then it got worse. One morning, we found a scratch across Daniel's car hood. No proof, but we knew. The kids held on to hope longer than I did. But when he showed up drunk to my son's basketball game and argued with the ref, they stopped asking about his visits. Still, I kept wondering, what if he means it when he says he wants to come back? Because he started saying it. In texts, voicemails, even a handwritten letter like it was 1995. I screwed up, I get it now. I'll do anything. But it was too late. By spring, it felt like we were teetering on an edge. I wanted to savor the peace with Daniel, the laughter, the safety I hadn't felt in years. But my ex kept circling like a moth at a window. At first, it was pathetic, random texts, stilted calls to the kids, a box of old keepsakes left on my porch. But it was wearing him down. Every move felt less like anger and more like desperation. Then he showed up again, unannounced. No yelling this time. Just standing there, holding a to-go coffee, trying to look composed. He waited until the kids left for school and I was alone, watering the garden. I thought about going inside but stood my ground. He approached slowly, saying he'd reflected on everything, me, the kids, even Daniel. He claimed he'd realized what he lost, that losing it all woke him up. I stayed silent. He said he was sober, in therapy twice weekly, working odd jobs for a friend's roofing business, staying with his mom temporarily. Then he said something that turned my stomach. "You won. You're tougher than I thought. But maybe I'm finally enough for you now." Enough for me? Like I'd been waiting for him to catch up. He kept going, saying he knew about the engagement, that Daniel wasn't serious, that I was only with him to get even. I stood there, hose in hand, thinking how absurd it was that the man who tossed me aside was now begging for a second chance, not out of love, but ownership. Then came the pitch. He said we could take it slow, that he'd sleep in the spare room, that we could rebuild quietly. He thought I'd cave if he looked pitiful enough. I told him I'd found peace, that I wasn't revisiting the past. I was living something new. The door he broke down was gone. I'd built a fortress in its place. He unraveled, accused me of lying to the kids, ruining his image, pretending to be someone else. Daniel came out, standing beside me. That simple act set my ex off more than words could. He pointed at Daniel, voice breaking, and said, "This guy, he's your future." I didn't answer. I went inside. He paced outside, muttering, then drove off. That night, Daniel and I discussed legal steps, how to protect what we'd built. I knew the chaos wasn't over, and I was right. The next week, he came back, with someone else, and it nearly broke everything. It was a Saturday morning, sunny, the kids with my brother. Daniel and I were heading to a local craft market. A normal day. Then came the knock, loud, deliberate. I peeked out and froze. My ex. And beside him, a woman in her mid-40s, arms folded, looking annoyed. His mother. The same woman who barely acknowledged me during our marriage, who called me too emotional when he forgot our anniversary, who said I should be grateful he came home at all. I hesitated but opened the door. Daniel stood nearby. My ex launched into a speech, rehearsed and rapid, saying he brought his mom to mediate, that she saw how much he'd changed. He had a plan to co-parent better, claimed we had unresolved history. His mom added that my choices weren't healthy, that I was confusing the kids by moving on too fast. She asked Daniel to leave so we could talk as a family. Daniel didn't budge. I didn't argue. I told them there was no history to resolve, that I wasn't confused or afraid. I asked them to leave. My ex snapped, shouting that I was ruining the kids' foundation, that they'd blame me someday. Daniel stepped forward, calmly asking them to go. My ex turned on him, yelling about stolen families and manipulation. His mom tried to pull him back, but he shook her off. I closed the door, slowly, firmly. The lock clicked. We stood in silence. Then I grabbed my purse and said, "Let's go to the market." And we did. That was the last time I saw him in person. We handled everything through lawyers after that. The kids, by their choice, spent less time with him. They saw what I saw. They remembered. Last week, Daniel and I finalized our wedding plans. Small, intimate, backyard, fairy lights, no big speeches, just the people who stayed. I sometimes pass the house where my ex lives with his mom. It's not about gloating, it's a reminder. I survived, I rebuilt. I didn't need him to feel complete. The update, I thought the door was finally shut, but something cracked it open again. I didn't plan to write more, convinced the showdown with his mother was the end. But people like him, ones who leave expecting you to wait forever, they don't stop. Not when their ego's bruised, not when the person you were no longer exists. 3 nights ago, a friend sent me a screenshot. An anonymous Instagram post. At first, I thought it was a scam, then I saw the photos. My heart stopped. 3 images all taken from afar. Me and Daniel, one at a cafe downtown, one in the grocery store lot, one in our yard with the kids, all recent, all within weeks. No tags, but the intent was clear. Captions dripped with venom, "Liars don't last," built on betrayal. Generic hashtags. It looked like a stranger's jab, but I knew. Daniel knew. We reported the account. It vanished within hours, but the damage wasn't online. It was in my head. He was still watching, still circling, looking for a crack. We checked the security cameras we'd installed after the last incident. Sure enough, 2 weeks ago, there he was, hoodie up, walking past our house at dawn, lingering just long enough to peer at the windows. No knock, no words, just presence. I sat the kids down the next day. I didn't soften it. I told them their dad might still cause trouble, that he might try to pull them into it. They handled it better than me. My daughter said, "He's trying to scare us. That's what weak people do." My son asked for a puppy. I said we'd think about it. Daniel called our lawyer. We're exploring a restraining order, gathering every text, post, and video. I want to believe this is the end, that he'll burn out and fade away. But I know better. He's not driven by love. It's ego. He didn't return because he missed me. He came back because I moved on. If he's reading this, and I suspect he might be, I want him to know, the woman you abandoned is gone. You're not haunting me. You're not hurting me. You're just proving why I never looked back. And if you come closer, online, in person, or otherwise, I'll finish what you started. Because I'm not afraid anymore.